to win a title. The Herd starts right now.
And I won't back down.
What up? Welcome in. Wherever you may be and however you may be making this part of your day. Thanks so much. I'm Doug Gottlieb. This is The Herd, whether you're watching on Fox Sports 1, listening on Fox Sports Radio, the iHeartRadio app, or the over... Are we at 10 million subscribers to the Herd podcast? Sure, we'll just throw out a number. Nobody's checking those numbers, are they? Somebody is somewhere. Good morning to you, Joy Taylor. How are you?
I'm great. Good morning.
Heard about a big interview over the weekend. Don't want to give it away, but if you read the Twitter sphere, you know college basketball. Somebody very, very, very close to Joy had a very, very, very big interview, which apparently went very, very well.
It's a beautiful morning in Los Angeles. The sun is shining. Welcome, Doug.
Good morning to you, Joy. So, look, college basketball has something special that everybody else sort of wants, right? Right? Like, look, there's other things that college basketball has that people don't want, but college basketball has a couple things that you want. I heard this from a buddy of mine. I'll give him credit. His name's Sarin Petro. He's a very talented radio host in Kansas City. And he said, and this is a great, if the bowl system was such a good idea, how come no one's ever copied it? Right? It's a great point. Whereas in college basketball, like what do we have? In the regular season, you have these incredible student sections. And if you look around the country, whether it's college football, they've kind of stolen that tried to steal that from college basketball. You get that when you watch foreign teams play. You get that in high school sports now. Teams have their own student section with their own nickname. That all started because of college basketball. But then the biggest thing that everybody wants in college basketball is, we call it March Madness. We can say it's the bracket. We can call it the NCAA tournament, which is the technical definition of it is the 2019 NCAA National Championship Tournament, which will be decided in Minneapolis, a week from tonight. And the bracket is what everybody wants, right? The brackets, and people today are bragging like, my son, who's 10 years old, has Michigan State winning a national championship in his bracket. We'll get to bracket guy upcoming in the show. But we have this, hey, look, man, it's 40 minutes. It's one game. And we do make definitive statements. And I've hated the idea of a definitive statement in a single elimination tournament. Like your team loses a game and all of a sudden your conference as a whole stinks. I don't understand that. Or John Calipari's Kentucky Wildcats lose to Auburn, who was ranked in the top 15 to start the season, won the SEC tournament, and they've played Kentucky twice, blown out once, played them close at home, played them twice. Hardest thing to do in basketball is beat a team 3 times, especially in college basketball. Hell, it's hard to do it three consecutive times in the NBA. So you lose in overtime to a conference foe, and what's the immediate reaction? John Calipari can't coach. Mike Krzyzewski, these one and dones, you can't win with the one and dones. There are first world problems with the one and dones. And a lot of times it's not just those players. It's all of the other guys that you recruit that think they're at the same level. I mean, Duke has had this problem for the last 10 years or so. I mean, look, cry me a river, but if you're not one of the top 2 or 3, if you're not one of the starters for Duke and you see yourself as part of that recruiting class, then you're going to leave. You're going to transfer because you don't want to come off the bench because they're just going to recruit more guys over you the next year, which is what happens at Kentucky. They also run the risk of if they actually play too well and win a national championship like they did with going back with Justice Winslow. Right? Whether it was Justice Winslow or Tyus Jones. Had Tyus Jones stayed at Duke for 2 years, 3 years, or all 4 years, he could have won multiple national titles. If you have an elite level point guard, it raises the level of everybody else. Don't believe me? I give you Michigan State and Cassius Winston. Or I give you Texas Tech and Matt Mooney. It's a 2-time transfer. Older kids, veteran kids, you're good at that spot. You're good. But today, the one and done is in the crosshairs of everybody in the media. And it is a damned if you do, damned if you don't proposition, right? Like if you don't win recruiting wars over-the-top prospects, let's not champion yourself. Let's not act like Roy Williams didn't want Zion Williamson. Like, he wanted him, and I don't know how much he would have played or if he would have started because he had two veterans in his front court. Roy Williams has an all-solar system All-American who's a freshman who didn't start, and he may lose him as well. So, look, the issue is not just emotional, but emotional attachment, emotional connection is a big part of what allows teams to compete and to win. You want to call it chemistry? Fine. In basketball, we call it being connected, right? Connected to one another. Looking at each other and just knowing where the other person's going to be. But also just the idea of an emotional investment in a place. I want you to think about this for a second. Here's the difference between the Duke players and the Michigan State players, or maybe the Kentucky players and the Auburn players. I was asked driving in, I was on Dan Patrick's show, and he said, what do you think Zion Williamson's doing today? I said, well, I hope he's going back, he's going to class, maybe going to get some shots up, enjoying a day off. He had himself a great weekend. They just came up a bucket short. One bucket short, that's it. One bucket from playing for a national championship in front of 70,000 people at U.S. Bank Stadium. But the thought is that he should be packing up his stuff, going to train for the NBA, removing himself from college. So if you think to yourself, what's the biggest difference? Well, the biggest difference is as Kenny Goins hits the shot of the year for Michigan State. Goins is a former walk-on who would have played at a mid-major level as a starter. Instead, bet on himself, and his dad picked up the tab and said, don't worry about it. Now he's on scholarship. But Kenny Goins, a former walk-on, hits the shot of the tournament over Zion Williamson, who's the player of the tournament and going to be the number one pick in the upcoming NBA draft. So what happens? One, Kenny Goins, had he lost last night, would have gotten home and felt terrible, as Zion Williamson feels terrible, would have gone to class and would have been a hero, would have been a champion, and the question wouldn't have been, what are you going to do today? It's, when are you going to get back in the gym? Because the emotional investment of all those guys is, I'm here, I've unpacked mentally, emotionally, and of course physically. I've never thought about packing up. Whereas the issue with the one and done is we're teaching players to not fully invest, not dig roots, just be a renter. Just come and stay and see what it's like, and the second you can get out, you get out. And look, I could go into look at the NBA. When the NBA teams want to lose, what do? They just play younger players because they're not that well developed. They don't shoot the basketball as well. Don't believe me that shooting is a major factor. Look at Kentucky's inability to make three-pointers yesterday with their freshmen. Same thing happened when, you go back to when Boogie Cousins was in college and they had Bledsoe and John Wall, and they played a West Virginia team that had one borderline NBA player. They finished 4 for 32 from three-point range. You improve incrementally as a shooter. Your fundamentals improve. College basketball in generally helps you improve your shooting over time. Just volume of coaching, volume of attempts. You also become a better teammate, a better team player. You understand rotations. You understand scouting reports and all of that. But to me, the biggest part outside of the physical strength of older players, because physical strength did not keep Zion Williamson or R.J. Barrett from playing for a national championship. Those guys' bodies are ready for whatever level of basketball. It's in the emotional investment. Little things matter more to them because this is as good as it's going to get for Xavier Tillman and Kenny Goins. And heck, maybe for Cassius Winston. He doesn't look like an NBA point guard. He may play in the NBA, but is he really a long-time NBA player? Probably not. And so while Michigan State lost a one-and-done, Jaren Jackson, last year, and lost a two-and-done, when you got people that are completely invested in the project's usually better. You ever done a school project? Right? You ever done a school project? There's always one person that might be super talented that sometimes misses a meeting. Don't worry, I'll get it done. I'll get it done. Tell me what you need to do. I'll get it done. But they're not fully invested. Which project is better? The slightly lesser talented group that always meets every Tuesday at 7 o'clock at the coffee shop to plan out for the 2 months leading up to the presentation, or the more talented group that's got a bunch of things working and is worried about, job applications, and it's their senior year, but they only have time for me. I can only meet once a month, and I can't be there from 7 to 8. I can get you at 7:30. I got a bunch of other things going. Which project's better? And all we have is the data to tell us that, yes, it's a single elimination tournament. Sure, Kentucky lost in overtime, had a chance to win regulation and in overtime. And yes, Duke is a made free throw away from playing in overtime and maybe playing for a national championship. But Kentucky lost to an Auburn team that lost arguably its most talented player. Duke should have lost to Central Florida, could have lost to Virginia Tech, and then did lose to Michigan State, who is without their second most talented player for the entire season, for most of the season. Like, it's not like you're lining up and losing to the Milwaukee Bucks or to a star-studded roster. You're losing to what anybody would consider inferior competition in terms of their overall talent. Is it coaching? Sure. Give it a part. Is it shooting? Absolutely. You become a better shooter over time. College basketball actually, wait for it, helps you become a better basketball player. But is it in the connection, cohesion, overall investment in the long-term and short-term success of everybody around you? I think the answer is yes. I know the answer is yes. Those are teams that are advancing to the Final Four. Whereas great players, it doesn't mean they're terrible teammates. Zion Williamson is not a bad teammate. RJ Barrett's a little bit selfish, but he's not a bad teammate or a bad guy. Tyus Jones is a good teammate, but the connection in, hey, this is the best, this is the most important thing I'm going to accomplish in my basketball career, and whatever else happens, as opposed to whether it's Duke or Kentucky or the Arizona team of last year, if this is just a stop on the way to stardom, what would your level of investment be?